Commander Vrek leaned forward in his observation pod, all four of his primary eyes focused on the combat floor below. The arena stretched out like a massive metallic bowl, 300 meters across, with walls that shimmered with energy shields to contain the violence within. Thousands of spectators filled the tiered seating, a cacophony of chittering, growling, and what passed for cheering among 17 different species. The air reeked of ozone, sweat, and the metallic tang of spilled blood. 10,000 credits, says the human doesn't get up, chittered Mekros, an insectoid trader from the hive cluster, his mandibles clicking with what Vrek had learned to recognize as amusement. Vrek's secondary eyes swiveled to regard his companion without moving his primary gaze from the arena floor. I would not take that bet. Look at him. He is done. And truly the human did look finished. Chen, they called him, though Vrek found human names unnecessarily simple compared to the proper 17-syllable naming conventions of his own people. The human lay crumpled on the blood-stained metal floor, one arm bent at an angle that even Vrek's limited knowledge of human anatomy told him was wrong. Blood, that curious red fluid humans used instead of proper hemolymph, pooled beneath the creature's torso. His breathing came in shallow, ragged gasps that Vrek could see even from 50 meters up in the command pod. The human's opponent, a Kraxan berserker named Thormund, stood over the fallen fighter with all four arms raised in triumph. The crowd roared its approval. Credits were already transferring across a dozen different banking systems as bets were settled. Vrek watched his own account balance climb by 47,000 credits. He had bet against the human. Naturally, everyone with half a brain. Medical scan complete, Commander, reported his aide, a nervous Pelthian whose skin flashed from green to yellow with anxiety. The human has sustained critical damage. 3 ribs fractured, left radius broken, significant internal bleeding. Neural activity suggests approaching unconsciousness. There, Vrek said, allowing himself a satisfied rumble from his vocal sacs. He's finished. Prepare to extract the body and process the betting results. Another successful tournament. He should have known better. He really should have known better. 3 weeks earlier, Chen had been sitting in a detention cell aboard the prison transport Quelvar's Mercy, which was, in Vrek's opinion, the most ironic name for a ship he had ever encountered. There was no mercy on Quelvar's ships, only profit. Vrek had been present for the intake processing, reviewing potential candidates for the arena games. It was part of his duty as combat coordinator to select fighters from the various criminals, debtors, and unfortunate souls who found themselves in Galactic Consortium custody. The human had been brought in wearing restraints that looked absurdly oversized for his frame, flanked by 2 Gormath guards who seemed to be taking their job far too seriously. This one, Vrek had asked Warden Quilnor, a serpentine Vashreen whose scales gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lighting. He looks barely functional. What did he do? Steal a cargo pod? Quilnor's tongue had flicked out, tasting the air with obvious amusement. Worse, Commander. He interfered with a Telkrin shipping operation, freed an entire hold full of indentured workers, made quite the mess of their operation on Station 47. The Telkrin Consortium wants him dead, but killing him outright would create diplomatic issues with the human colonial authority. So, we offer him the games. Marcus had looked up then. His eyes, those strange forward-facing predator eyes, had locked onto Vrek's primary pair. Let me guess, the human had said, his translator chip rendering his words in standard galactic. I fight. I maybe don't die. Precisely, Quilnor had hissed, clearly pleased. Survive 5 matches in the arena and you earn your freedom, full pardon, all charges dropped, and safe passage back to human space. Die, and well, the problem solves itself. Everyone wins. Except me if I lose, Marcus had said dryly. Vrek had studied the human's file on his datapad. Height, 1.8 meters. Mass, 82 kilograms. No natural armor plating. No venomous capabilities. No enhanced musculature compared to the typical arena fighters. Humans were persistence hunters. The file noted, whatever that meant. They had decent endurance but lacked the raw power of Kraxans, the speed of Zelthrim, or the regenerative capabilities of Gormath warriors. You understand the odds are not in your favor? Vrek had asked, genuinely curious. In the past cycle we have had 43 fighters attempt the 5-match challenge. 3 survived. None of them were from species as physically limited as yours. Marcus had shrugged. A gesture Vrek had learned meant casual dismissal among humans. So you are saying there is a chance? A statistical anomaly, perhaps. Good enough for me. When do I start? Quilner had laughed, a sound like rocks scraping together. Such confidence. I almost admire it. You will face a Pelthian scout in your first match. They are quick, poisonous, and have killed 4 opponents this season. After that, if you survive, the difficulty increases. Gormath bruisers, Zelthrim assassins, perhaps even a Kraxon if you make it that far. And if I win all 5? Marcus had asked. Then you walk free, human. Though I would not waste time planning your victory celebration. Quilnor's eyes had gleamed with predatory satisfaction. The arena has a perfect record of humbling the overconfident. Vrek had filed the paperwork and forgot about the human, assuming he would be dead within the first match. The Pelthian scout, a vicious creature named Slicks, had a 93% kill rate. No human was going to change that statistic. Except Shen did exactly that. And then he kept doing it. The first match had been, in Vrek's professional opinion, a complete fluke. Slicks the Pelthian had been faster, more agile, and armed with neurotoxin-coated claws that could paralyze a Gormath in seconds. The match should have lasted maybe 3 minutes, 4 if the human got lucky and managed to dodge a few strikes. Instead, it had gone on for 17 agonizing minutes that had Vrek checking the arena's environmental systems to see if something was malfunctioning. Marcus had been cut, poisoned, and bleeding from at least 6 different wounds. The neurotoxin should have shut down his nervous system. Should have. Instead, the human had kept moving, kept fighting, his movements getting sloppier but never stopping. Slicks had grown frustrated, overextended on a lunge, and Marcus had caught the Pelthian's arm, twisted it with a sickening crack, and slammed the creature's head into the arena floor with enough force to crack its chitinous skull. Medical impossibility. The arena physician, a Quelix named Dr. Fenton, had reported afterward. The neurotoxin concentration in his blood should have rendered him comatose. His pain receptors should be screaming, yet his brain activity shows conscious override of autonomic responses. I have never seen anything like it. Vrek had filed the report and increased the difficulty for match 2. The second opponent had been Grulnak, a Gormath bruiser with regenerative tissue and bones like titanium alloy. The fight had been brutal, direct, a contest of pure endurance and violence. Grulnak had broken Marcus's nose in the first 30 seconds, fractured his collarbone in the next minute, and proceeded to pummel the human into what should have been unconsciousness. But Marcus had not gone unconscious. He had absorbed the damage, waited for an opening, and when Grulnak had paused to showboat for the crowd, the human had struck a kick to the knee joint, which apparently was a weak point even on Gormath physiology, followed by a series of strikes to the throat that had left Grulnak gasping and vulnerable. Marcus had finished it with a chokehold that lasted 4 minutes until the Gormath finally passed out. He should not have the strength, Vrek had muttered to himself, watching the replay for the 5th time. His muscles are not designed for that kind of sustained output. The betting pools had started to shift after match 2. The odds on Marcus surviving went from 300 to 1 down to 70 to 1. Vrek had found this irritating. Humans were supposed to be fragile, diplomatic, soft creatures who built things and talked about feelings. They were not supposed to win arena matches against species specifically evolved for combat. Match 3 had been against a Zelthrim assassin named Cavrix, a creature of pure speed and precision with blades extending from its forearms. The Zelthrim had carved Marcus up like a training dummy, leaving cuts across his chest, arms, and face. Blood had flowed freely, and Vrek had been certain this would be the end. Marcus had won by throwing dirt in Cavrix's eyes, a move so simple and unsophisticated that the crowd had booed, and tackling the blinded assassin off the edge of a platform. They had both fallen 7 meters, but only Marcus had gotten up afterward. Cheating, Necros had complained. That was not honorable combat. There are no rules about honor in the arena, Vrek had replied, though privately he agreed. It was unsettling. Match 4 had been yesterday, against a Threxian berserker named Kolgoth who stood 2.5 meters tall and had armor plating that could deflect plasma rounds. The fight had lasted 43 minutes. 43 minutes of Marcus being thrown around like a rag doll, smashed into walls, and generally brutalized in ways that made even the bloodthirsty crowd uncomfortable. Marcus had won by exhausting his opponent, waiting until Kolgoth's movements slowed from fatigue, then exploiting the gaps in his armor plating with a piece of broken metal from the arena floor. 16 stabs later, Kolgoth had bled out. The betting odds now sat at 8 to 1 against Marcus surviving match 5. Vrek had tripled his bet against the human. This Kraxon champion would end this nonsense. Humans were not supposed to be this resilient. It was wrong. It was unnatural. It was terrifying. Thormund had entered the arena to a deafening roar that shook the observation pod's reinforced glass. The Kraxon champion stood 2.4 meters tall, his armored hide gleaming like burnished copper under the arena lights. 4 arms, each corded with muscle that could bend steel bars, flexed and stretched as he performed his traditional pre-combat ritual. His head resembled a hammer, broad and flat, with eyes set deep into bony ridges that could withstand direct impacts that would shatter concrete. Rek had felt genuine relief when he saw Thormund step onto the combat floor. This was it. This was the end of the human's impossible streak. Thormund has 47 victories, Rek had explained to Mekros, who was nervously clicking his mandibles. 0 defeats. He once killed 3 opponents in a single match when the arena masters thought it would be entertaining to give him a challenge. The human cannot possibly survive this. Marcus had looked small by comparison. Tiny, even. Standing there in his tattered combat suit, covered in the scars and poorly healed wounds from 4 previous matches, he had looked like prey waiting for the predator to strike. His breathing had been measured, controlled, but Vrek could see the slight tremor in his left hand. Even humans knew fear, apparently. The match had begun with a bell tone that resonated through the arena. Thormund had not wasted time with posturing. He had charged forward with the force of a cargo transport, all 4 arms reaching for the human. Marcus had dodged left, barely, the displacement of air from Thormund's passing strong enough to stagger him. The Kraxon's fist had struck the arena floor where Marcus had been standing, leaving a crater in the reinforced metal. What followed had been 23 minutes of systematic destruction. Thormund had caught Marcus in the 5th minute, 2 of his massive hands closing around the human's torso and lifting him off the ground. The squeeze had been audible even in the observation pod, a cracking sound that made Vrek's smaller eyes close in sympathetic pain. Marcus had screamed, actually screamed, and Vrek had marked that as the first time the human had vocalized pain in any match. The human had managed to escape by jabbing his fingers into Thormund's eyes, a desperate move that had bought him 30 seconds of freedom before the enraged Kraxon had backhanded him across the arena. Marcus had hit the far wall with enough force to dent the metal plating. Then had come the injuries, mounting one after another. A kick that bent Marcus's left arm wrong, a punch that Vrek was certain had fractured ribs, a throw that had left the human gasping and coughing blood onto the arena floor. Thormund's final blow had been almost merciful in its brutality, all 4 fists together, brought down like a sledgehammer onto Marcus's back as the human tried to stand. The human had collapsed, motionless, and the arena had fallen silent except for Thormund's triumphant roar. "He is finished," Vrek had said, and finally believed it. Marcus lay in a spreading pool of his own blood, limbs splayed at angles that suggested a puppet with cut strings. His chest moved, barely, shallow rises and falls that the medical scanners struggled to detect. The arena floor's medical grid lit up beneath him, red indicators blossoming across the display like warning flowers. "Scan complete," the Pelthian aide reported, his voice crackling with static through the communication link. "Multiple fractures detected, 3 ribs on the left side, clean break on the left radius, hairline fracture on the right femur, internal bleeding in the abdominal cavity, probable concussion, neural activity declining. Commander, his vital signs are approaching critical failure thresholds." Vrek stood from his seat, all 4 primary eyes locked on the motionless human below. He reached for the arena-wide communication system, his finger hovering over the activation button. Protocol demanded he wait for the 30-second count before declaring a victor, but this was unnecessary. Anyone with functioning optical organs could see the match was over. "He is finished," Vrek announced, his voice booming through the arena speaker system translated simultaneously into 17 languages. "Prepare medical extraction." The crowd erupted. What had been tense silence transformed into celebration as thousands of beings began cheering, howling, chittering, and making whatever noise their species made when credits were won. Thormund raised all 4 arms higher, basking in the adulation, his hammer-shaped head turning slowly to acknowledge each section of the audience. Vrek's datapad lit up with transaction notifications. Credits were flowing like water through a broken dam. Bets settled. Accounts updated. Fortunes made and lost in seconds. Mekros was chittering something about always knowing the human would fail, conveniently forgetting his earlier nervousness. Other commanders and wealthy spectators were slapping appendages together, celebrating the return to natural order. Humans were not apex fighters. The arena had proven this truth once again. Mathematics and biology had been vindicated. Vrek allowed himself a satisfied rumble and began tabulating his winnings. Then Marcus moved. It started with a finger, just one finger on Marcus's right hand. twitching against the blood-slicked metal floor. Vrek almost missed it. His attention divided between his datapad's financial display and accepting congratulations from the observation pod's other occupants. Then the finger curled, became a fist. "Commander," the Pelthian aide whispered, his skin flashing from yellow to bright orange alarm. "Commander, the human is moving. Residual nerve activity," Vrek said dismissively, not looking up, muscles firing randomly, as consciousness fades. It happens sometimes with species that have primitive neural systems. "No, Commander. Look." Vrek looked. Marcus's chest expanded, a deep deliberate breath that was nothing like the shallow gasps from moments before. His shoulders shifted, his right leg bent, foot planting flat against the arena floor. The medical scanner's red indicators flickered, some shifting to yellow, then green. Impossible, the scanners had to be malfunctioning. The human pushed himself up onto his right elbow. Blood dripped from his mouth, spattering the floor beneath him. His left arm hung useless at his side, the broken radius visible as a bulge beneath the skin. But his right arm was moving with purpose, with strength that should not exist in a body that damaged. "What is he doing?" Necros chittered, all his previous celebration dying in his throat. He should be unconscious. He should be dying. Marcus's breathing changed again, becoming rhythmic, controlled. 4 counts in through his nose. Hold for 4, 8 counts out through his mouth. Vrek recognized it suddenly from a human combat manual he had been forced to read during his training. Box breathing, they called it, a technique to control the autonomic nervous system, to override the body's panic response and force clarity through pain. "Get Dr. Fenton on the communication link now," Vrek snapped, his earlier confidence evaporating like water on a hot plate. The human shifted his weight, brought his right knee up, planted his foot. He was rising to one knee now, his head still bowed, blood still dripping, but moving with inexorable determination that sent cold tendrils of unease through Vrek's primary nervous cluster. Dr. Fenton's image appeared on the view screen, his Quillix features twisted with confusion. "Commander, I am seeing the telemetry, but I do not understand what I am seeing." "Explain it," Vrek demanded. His adrenal glands have flooded his system with hormones. Adrenaline, norepinephrine, cortisol. His heart rate has spiked to 170 beats per minute. His blood is shunting away from non-essential systems and flooding his major muscle groups. Pain receptors are being chemically suppressed. It is like his body has activated an emergency combat protocol. "All species have adrenaline responses," Vrek said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Not like this," Dr. Fenton said, his voice carrying a note of what might have been awe or horror. "Commander, human adrenal systems are disproportionately powerful compared to their baseline physiology. It is an evolutionary remnant from when they were prey animals who had to either fight off or flee from larger predators. Their bodies can temporarily override damage signals, suppress pain and increase strength output by significant percentages, and that is not accounting for the psychological factor." "Psychological factors?" "Stubbornness, Commander. Willpower. The human brain can choose to ignore what the body is telling it. They can decide not to quit even when quitting is the logical choice. It is not rational, it is not efficient, but it is effective." The crowd had gone silent. Thousands of beings watching as Chen, broken and bleeding, rose to one knee in the center of the arena. His head lifted slowly and Vrek could see his face now. Blood ran from a cut above his eye. His nose was definitely broken, bent at an angle that made Vrek's secondary stomachs churn. But his eyes, those predator eyes, were clear and focused. Thormund had stopped celebrating. The Kraxan champion turned, all 4 arms lowering slightly, his posture shifting from triumph to uncertainty. Even he could sense that something was wrong, that the natural order of the match had somehow been disrupted. Marcus's lips moved, and though no sound carried to the observation pod, Vrek could read the shape of the words through the translator algorithm. 2 words, in the human's native language, before the translator rendered them in standard galactic. "Not finished." The human's right hand pressed against his thigh. His left arm still hung useless, ribs still broken, internal bleeding still happening, but none of that seemed to matter anymore. Chen was standing up, and Vrek realized with creeping horror that he had made a terrible miscalculation. Humans did not quit, even when they should, especially when they should. Marcus stood fully upright and the arena remained locked in absolute silence. His left arm dangled useless at his side, swaying slightly with each labored breath. Blood had soaked through his combat suit, turning the gray fabric dark and wet. His face was a mask of red, cuts and bruises painting him in as something that barely looked human anymore. And he was grinning. Actually grinning, his teeth stained red. That expression of bared teeth that humans used to show amusement but that every other species in the galaxy recognized as a threat display. Impossible, Vrek breathed. Thormund took a step backward. Just one step. But Vrek had watched enough arena matches to recognize what it meant. Doubt. Confusion. The Kraxan champion had never encountered an opponent who got back up after that final blow. In 47 matches, that finishing move had ended every fight. The psychological impact of its failure was written in every line of Thormund's posture. Marcus spoke, his voice rough and wet but amplified by the arena's audio pickups. "You hit like my grandmother, and she has been dead for 6 years. Trash talk." Dr. Fenton's voice crackled over the communication link. "A psychological warfare technique. He is attempting to destabilize his opponent's mental state." "Is it working?" Necros asked, mandibles clicking rapidly. They all watched as Thormund's confusion transformed into rage. The Kraxan roared, a sound that rattled the observation pod's windows, and charged forward with all 4 arms extended. It was the same charge that had started the match, the same overwhelming force that had crushed dozens of opponents. But this time Marcus did not dodge. The human stepped forward inside Thormund's reach, moving with speed that his damaged body should not possess. He ducked under the Kraxan's grasping upper arms and drove his right fist, with every ounce of his remaining strength and that chemically enhanced adrenaline surge, directly into Thormund's throat. The Kraxan's charge stopped as if he had hit an invisible wall. His roar cut off, replaced by a wet, choking sound. Thormund's lower 2 arms came around to swat Marcus away, but the human was already moving, already inside the Kraxan's defense in a way that should not be possible for something so small and damaged. Marcus jumped, using Thormund's own body as a ladder, his right hand finding purchase on the Kraxan's armor plating. He pulled himself up, ignoring the screaming protests of his broken ribs, and wrapped his legs around Thormund's thick neck. His right arm, the only limb still fully functional, coiled around like a constrictor serpent. "Chokehold," Greg said, leaning forward. "But Kraxans can hold their breath for 12 minutes. He cannot maintain that grip long enough." Marcus did not try to maintain it. Instead, he used his position to drive his elbow, again and again, into the same spot on Thormund's throat where he had punched. The Kraxan's hands came up trying to pull the human off, but Marcus had leveraged his entire body weight and what little strength remained into making himself impossible to dislodge without Thormund using all 4 hands, which meant Thormund could not defend his throat. The Kraxan spun, trying to throw Marcus off, but the human clung like a parasite, his elbow rising and falling with mechanical precision. 8 strikes, 10, 15. Thormund's movements became sluggish, uncoordinated. His breathing, what little he could manage, came in wet, rattling gasps. 20 strikes. Thormund dropped to one knee. 25 strikes. The Kraxan's arms fell to his sides. 30 strikes, and the champion collapsed forward onto the arena floor with a crash that Vrek felt through the observation pod's structure. Marcus rode the fall, only releasing his hold when Thormund's body had gone completely limp beneath him. The human rolled off, landed on his back beside his defeated opponent, and stared up at the arena's ceiling lights. His chest heaved with ragged breaths. His right arm fell to his side, finally surrendering to exhaustion. But Thormund did not move, did not breathe. The medical scanners confirmed what everyone watching already knew. The Kraxan champion was unconscious, possibly dead, and Chen had won his 5th match. Vrek stared at his datapad as the numbers recalculated themselves with merciless efficiency. Negative 63,000 credits. His entire profit from the tournament, gone. His personal betting stake, gone. 3 months of salary, evaporated in the time it took a human to refuse to die. Around him, the observation pod had descended into chaos. Necros was chittering in distress, his mandibles clicking so rapidly they produced a sound like grinding gears. Other species were shouting, arguing, demanding reviews of the match footage. Credits were being transferred back, bets reversed, entire fortunes changing hands as the impossible became recorded fact. On the arena floor, medical teams were rushing to both fighters. Thormund was being loaded onto a gravity stretcher, still unconscious. Marcus had waved off the medics initially, then collapsed when he tried to stand, and was now being carried out on a second stretcher, his grin still visible even through the blood and exhaustion. "Commander Vrek." Dr. Fenton's image reappeared on the view screen, his Quelix features grave. "We need to discuss the implications of what we just witnessed." "The human got lucky," Vrek said, but even he did not believe it anymore. "No, Commander. Luck does not explain this. I have been reviewing human physiological data for the past hour, cross-referencing with other species in our database. Humans are terrifying and we did not realize it because we were measuring the wrong things. Vrek's primary eyes focused on the doctor. Explain. We measured strength, speed, armor, regeneration, all the standard combat metrics. But humans excel in categories we do not typically value in arena combat: pain tolerance through conscious override, endurance that allows them to function far past the point where other species would shut down, a healing factor that is not rapid but remarkably comprehensive over time, and most dangerous of all, psychological resilience that borders on irrational. Irrational. They do not quit, Commander. Their brains are wired to continue fighting even when all logical analysis says they should surrender or die. It is a survival trait from their evolution. When giving up meant becoming food for something higher on their planet's food chain, they adapted by becoming too stubborn to die easily. Vrek felt a chill run through his nervous cluster. And we have been treating them as minor species, diplomatically insignificant. Yes, Commander, we have, but consider this. If one human alone, untrained in our combat methods, with no enhancements or weapons beyond his own body, can defeat 5 arena champions including a Kraxon, what could a million humans do? What could a billion do if they decided we were the enemy? The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Warden Quilner's voice crackled over the communication system. Chen has satisfied the terms of his contract. 5 victories, 5 matches. He is granted full pardon and freedom. As agreed, Drake watched the screens as Marcus was carried through the arena's exit tunnel, and for the first time in his military career, he felt genuine relief that humanity was currently an ally of the Galactic Consortium. He did not want to imagine them as an enemy. 2 days later, Drake stood in the departure bay as Chen, arm in a medical cast and ribs wrapped in regenerative bandaging, prepared to board the transport to human space. The human moved stiffly, but he moved, already healing, already recovering. Commander, Marcus said, nodding with that strange human head bob gesture. Human, Drek replied, all 4 eyes meeting Marcus's too. I must ask, when I declared you finished when you were broken on that floor, what made you stand? Marcus smiled. That predator expression that Vrek now understood was not just amusement but defiance. You do not understand humans yet, Commander. We are only finished when we decide we are finished, not when someone else decides for us. Not when our bodies say we should be, not when the odds say we cannot win. He paused at the transport ramp, looking back. We are never truly finished until we choose to be. Remember that. The human limped up the ramp and disappeared into the ship. Vrek watched the transport detach and accelerate toward the jump point, carrying Chen back to human space, back to his people. He thought about Dr. Fenton's words about what humanity represented, about what they could become if pushed. He pulled out his datapad and began composing a report to Galactic Command. Subject line: Threat Assessment Revision. Species Classification Human Priority Urgent. Humans were not minor species. They were not weak. They were something far more dangerous than physically superior warriors. They were survivors who refused to accept defeat, who got back up when they should stay down, who won through sheer stubborn refusal to lose. In his report, Vrek wrote a single recommendation that he knew would change humanity's standing in the Galactic Consortium. Never underestimate them, never count them out, and above all, never ever declare a human finished until you have personally confirmed they have stopped breathing. Even then, wait 5 minutes, just to be safe. He approved the report and sent it through official channels. Behind him, Mekros chittered nervously. Do you think others will listen to your warning, Commander? Vrek's secondary eyes watched the transport disappear into the darkness of space, carrying its human cargo home. Somewhere out there, in the vastness of the galaxy, billions more humans lived their lives, unaware of what one of their kind had accomplished in an alien arena, unaware of the reputation he had built for them, unaware that they had just become something the galaxy would learn to respect and fear. They will listen, Vrek said quietly, or they will learn the same lesson I did, the expensive way. The departure bay fell silent except for the hum of distant engines and the soft clicking of Mekros's worried mandibles. Vrek turned away from the viewport and walked toward his office, already composing the next section of his report in his mind. Humanity had announced itself today, not through diplomacy or technology or grand speeches but through one broken man who refused to stay down. And the galaxy, whether it realized it yet or not, would never see humans the same way again. The arena would continue. Other fighters would come and go. But Rek knew that whenever a human stepped onto that blood-stained floor in the future, the betting odds would be very, very different. Because everyone would remember Chen, the human who heard the words "he's finished" and decided those words did not apply to him. Not today, not ever. Somewhere in the station's medical wing, Thormund was recovering, his pride more damaged than his body. He would fight again, probably win again, reclaim his reputation through sheer physical dominance, but he would never forget the small human who climbed him like a tree and beat him into unconsciousness through nothing but refusal to quit. None of them would forget, and that Vrek realized as he entered his office and sealed the door behind him, was exactly what made humanity dangerous. Not their strength, not their technology, not their weapons, their refusal to be forgot, their insistence on mattering, on fighting, on standing back up no matter how many times they were knocked down. He filed his report, transferred his financial losses into the official record, and sat in his command chair, all four eyes staring at the blank wall ahead. The tournament was over. Chen was free. Life would return to normal. But Vrek knew, with the certainty of someone who had witnessed something fundamental shift in the galaxy's power structure, that nothing would ever be quite the same again. Humans were here. Humans were survivors. And humans, as he had learned so expensively, were never truly finished. Not until they decided to be.